Okay, back in November of just this last year, the Brants were invited to go to Nairobi to an SIM conference. And since they're retired and they decided to add on Ethiopia again and visit the Bible school. And at that time, they asked me if I wanted to go, and I said, to do what? And they said, just come along. I said, okay, when? They said, January. And like usual, I just said, sure, I'll go along. So we started traveling to Ethiopia on January 17th. And we arrived there on the 19th after a night in Dubai. When we got to the airport there in Addis, it turned out that the driver we had was the same driver that was there last year and drove for us by the name of Bedlu. Bedlu is an Ethiopian Orthodox believer. And he heard the gospel extensively last time we were there, and he heard the gospel extensively this time. He knows what the gospel is. Just pray for Bedlu and his accepting the gospel and becoming a true believer. So we arrived there on the 19th. On the 20th, Joanne and I went shopping for food and supplies for our time down in Emdeber. Emdeber is roughly 180 miles or 6 hours or something like that from Addis. And we did that in the morning while Howard was preparing to preach on Sunday. So in the afternoon, when we came back, all of a sudden all the streets are all closed, everything is booked, and there are lots of people everywhere. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church celebrates Timkat. Timkat celebrates the baptism of Jesus in the River Jordan. This festival is best known for its ritual reenactment of baptism. During the ceremony of Timkat, the Tabot, a model of the Ark of the Covenant, is wrapped in cloth and borne in a procession on the head of priests. So what the priests did was they had this cowl and all, and they wore this. Very ceremonial, lots of dancing, lots of noise, and kind of interesting. I had to figure out what in the world was going on. That evening, we went across Addis and we had dinner with an Ethiopian missionary to South Sudan. He and his wife were back from furlough, and it turns out that he's a bold witness to both the Orthodox as well as the Muslims while in Sudan. Many of the Muslims there are migratory with their flocks and herds, and he told us stories of witnessing to some of these herdsmen, and months later others would come back and ask him about Christ and the ministry, and several people have come to salvation in this way. Things that are hard to believe. A lot of persecution there, and we had a good time and a good visit. The next day we headed down to Emdeber and arrived at the teacher's house and unpacked. I went to the hotel, which they had promised me, that had water and electricity. Well, sometime in the future that's coming to a theater near you. We occasionally had electricity and water was buckets. Dinner that night was on a eucalyptus wood open fire with grilled sheep. And we had that with the Kalihiwat church leaders and teachers. The next day, Sunday, Howard preached at the local Emdeber Kalihiwat church, which is located at the original site where the first Bible college was. And for nostalgia's sake, for those of us that were there, this is the original Bible college. You're looking across a stream to a series of mud buildings that were there. They started off in very primitive conditions. Howard had asked Corey and I numerous times to go over, and we kept on saying, why? And then he showed us that they had borrowed benches from one place and were writing on benches and sleeping on the floor, and we said, okay, we can do something. So that's what started our travels over there. The next day, as I did most of the early mornings, I went out for an exercise walk, somewhere between 3 and 5 miles. I'd pick some different direction along some back road or trail just to see more of the countryside. However, the first part of the walk usually was in the pitch black. I'd sometimes pass by somebody, usually after light, but sometimes before. I received many, many interesting looks from the locals. This is a picture of an Orthodox church just outside of Emdeber that would wake me up oh so many times every day in the early morning. Outside of Emdeber, but not outside of earshot. And another thing you hear every evening and every night and early morning, besides the dogs constantly barking, because they're barking at the hyenas. They're the Muslim calls to worship. I don't know, there has to be 30 times a day or something like that, and they compete with the Orthodox Church, blaring this out over loudspeakers. So what we hear are hyenas. And right here is a picture of a hyena print with my hand as a kind of a size comparison. They look like dog prints, but much, much larger. One morning, when I was walking down the main road out of the town in the pitch black, I went down out of town, across the bridge, and was walking up, and you have enough light to know there's a road in front of you, but that's about it. I heard this shuffling sound on the other side of the road. I turned my headlight on and turned it over in that direction, and on the other side of the road, going in the opposite direction, was a hyena. He was about yay high. He didn't pay me any, never mind. He just kept on trotting down toward the river, which is nice. This is a picture of a hyena. What I saw was by headlight. This is a picture off the internet. But here's a few pieces of information. The spotted hyena, there's 3 different types of hyenas, is about 35 inches high, about yay high, 5.5 feet long without the tail, and then up to about 190 pounds. And for those of you that have good, strong chompers, well, they have about 1,100 pounds of PSI of bite strength. So they crush pretty much anything they latch a hold of. Well, enough about the local critters, except, of course, a regular visitor pretty much every afternoon across the roof of the teacher's house. Ask Oliver about hunting them with a slingshot. And then there's other indigenous creatures that fly by. This is one that I saw as I started up work. The moths were pretty large. So what did I do? Well, for one, I taught conversational English to a class. I warned them up front that English is a second language for me and that I don't have a first. Actually, in most places, they learn the English structure and grammar and all that in school. However, they do not have access to normal English speakers. And like a lot of us, don't practice speaking in another language because it's hard and because we're self-conscious. Well, my original plans flew out of the window because of the limited English usage. So I changed course and did a lot of reading out loud for some children's Bible story books that I had brought. And from these, we pulled specific words to work on. For example, those with long vowels, with short vowels, learned some meanings of words, sound-alike words, and there are sounds that they can't pronounce, like the sound in with or though or that. They use a Z, and so their tongue doesn't come to touch their teeth. So I was trying to teach them how to make that sound. So I put my tongue out there on the teeth and said, that, though. And they wouldn't put their tongue on their teeth. They would always come back. So it was all Z's. So I started accentuating the movements. And pretty soon it was, sticking my tongue out. Well, I got back that evening and I was telling Joanne some of my trials and tribulations of teaching. And she goes, oh no, that's a big insult. Big insult. And so the next day, I went to class and I grabbed one of the teachers there, and I apologized to the class, and they all laughed. They knew that I was just trying to get the point across, and I had no clue that I was doing something fairly insulting. The things you learn. I gave an assignment one weekend. It was to describe what they did, ate, their modes of transportation, in 6 or more sentences. I was trying to get them to get used to stringing words together in sentences and putting a couple of sentences together. I told them to write it out in English, thinking in my limited mind that if they had it in English in front of them, when they read it out loud in front of the class, it would come easier to them. Well, 4 of them did magnificently. They aced it. One of them, more the class clown, he really didn't complete his assignment, but he enjoyed himself. And then the other one, the most studious of them, he was an older gentleman, the oldest one in the class. He kind of said he didn't do the assignment, and that really puzzled me. It was just the way he said that he didn't do the assignment. So after class, I went up to him and I go, why didn't you do this assignment? Then I learned something else. Not all of the students there have completed even high school or even part of high school. He had made it through the 7th grade. And so I asked him if he could do it in Amharic and then speak it into English. He did that. He did fabulous. And overall, he actually got the highest score at the end of the English class that we had, overall. So it was a learning experience for me just to remember where I'm at, what resources they have, and I'm in a different part of the world. Then I did lots of repairs, mainly to door handles and lock sets, the strike plates, and other door repairs, both on wood doors and on metal doors. That door is actually closed, and it's so badly warped that it meets in one spot. And those are the things, those door handles and those lock sets, I don't know what they do, but most of them were broken. So I was pulling those out, replacing them, switching locks around. And that's what they had for the strike plates, because somebody thought it would be good to put the lock set on the one side and keep the strike plates for themselves. So I did a lot of repair and fixing those up and putting metal plates that I scavenged from different sets. So a lot of door repairs just to try to keep things functional. If anybody wants to go over there and kind of be their handyman, they'd probably just take you and feed you injera and injera wat all the time. But let's back up just a little bit. You see, I've been over there, this was my 5th time. Each time we've been over there, we've left tools. You know, we have some tools, they need some tools, so we leave some. And then the next time we come, we have tools and we leave some more. Things like that. Well, this is what I was shown when I asked about this tool storage. It was just a room full of junk with the tools scattered in there. We had a talk about the care and feeding of tools after that. Actually, several talks. And then as the time would go on, I go, we left one of these, and they eventually it would appear. So there were these things scattered all around. By the end, when I left, we had made a tool inventory. There was a cabinet with all the tools in there. They all had them itemized and listed, and each little door was locked, and so there's hope. A little bit of hope. I also did some floor tile repair. In their big conference room, they have all this, it's a nice conference room. They have these great big 2-foot by 2-foot tiles in the whole floor there. Well, the sun comes in and strikes one swath of this floor. And so the tiles expand at a different rate than the floor underneath it. And so they had kind of buckled and popped up off of the floor. Well, in my naive mind, they put tiles down in the same way they do here in the United States. What a joke. They found their own way, and I think the only thing that was originally holding these tiles down was the grout in between them. So when it expanded, it pops up. So when I cut the grout lines, all these tiles were loose. They had just been sitting on this porous concrete block. It looks like they had taken a bag of concrete, dropped it there, sprinkled a little water, and pressed a tile onto it. And then quickly grouted them together, because that way you can make them level and things like that. 100% silicone caulk works wonders. You can use it for glue, to glue them down. You can put the caulk in between, because now you have an expansion joint, so you don't have to deal with the sunshine. There's some expansion on there. It seemed to work really well. But you had to sweep up all of this concrete debris that, because you'd only sprinkled some water, there was little chunks and chips, and it was fun. They asked also to repair the roof, but when I went up with the leaders so they could kind of show me, there was a window. We're on the 2nd story, and there's a window. You open up the window, and there's a ladder. It's bolted to the wall, but there's no platform. And so you have to climb up on the windowsill. Then you have to grab the ladder and swing out into space. And I looked at the leaders, and the one guy goes, he's terrified. And I go, I am too. There's no safety gear here. And they go, well, maybe next time we'll work on this one. So we never made it up on the roof. There is a little bit of wisdom. I think we were talking about wisdom this morning. Yeah, hopefully some of it's stuck to me and as well as them. So by this time I had gone around and gathered up information on what needed to be, supplies needed, what they wanted built, what needed to be repaired, etc. So Bedlu, the driver, Asphalt, who was the original general secretary, happened to have a day off. And we took a long day, drove up to Addis, picked up everything, came back, and resumed the next day. The second Saturday I was there in Emdeber, I went to a funeral. with some of the church leaders. Now, they had just heard about this person passing away on Friday, and the funeral's on Saturday. There's a small heat thing there and no preservation, so things happen very, very quickly. I had use of the van, and so what I did is I thought ignorantly it was going to be me and a couple of the church leaders and the driver, of course, and we were going to go to this funeral, and the church leaders could, participate and do their responsibility. Well, we left for the funeral at 9:30, and all of a sudden the driver pulls off to the side of the road. The doors of the van go open, and the next thing I know, there's 8 people in there, plus me and the driver. And we tootle off down the road to Goubray. Goubray is 16 miles down the way, and it is the major college town there. To get to Emdeburg, you go from Addis, you go down to Wokite, you turn, you go through Goubray, and another 16 miles, you're in Emdeburg. Just a hop, skip, and a jump. So we drove almost to Goubray, and then we turned south. It was an area I'd never been to. And it was really nice. They had 2 miles of really nice road, probably the nicest road I've been on. Well, that 16 miles, we averaged 13 miles an hour. Because after that 2 miles, it turned into dirt road. Sort of unmaintained dirt road. And so we were all bouncing down the road at 13 miles an hour. So we arrived there, so we took off at 9:30, we arrived there at 11:30. So it took us 2 hours to go basically 32 miles. But by the time we had got there, they had already given the message, and the choir group that was there had done their part. And this is where it got interesting to me. As we got out of the van, all these people, they immediately started grabbing for tissues called soft, because it's toilet paper and it's soft, I guess. And I guess that's where the word comes from, because they have unique ways of saying things. But we walked over toward the fence where the house where the man was still there, his wife had passed away. Immediately as we walked through the gate, they started weeping and wailing. They told me I didn't have to do this, which was good, because I haven't figured out a way to automatically cry. And so very big show of emotions. And they did this all the way until they met the husband. And then they stopped and they all came out. And from there, we walked over to down the way to where they have the burial area, and they had already dug the grave. We got there, and there was a large crowd. And while we were there, Asphalt gave a short message, and family members would be coming up. They'd be so distraught they couldn't physically stand, so there would be a group of 2 or 3 people around them. And so there was wailing and physical collapse and people passing out. And, much stronger show of emotions than we're used to here. So that was a takeaway. Lot more outward show of grief. Things happen very fast because of the heat and because of the things. But the other thing that happens is communication happens real fast. So there were a lot of people all the way from Addis that had come down just overnight to be at this funeral. Everything stops when somebody passes away. Then we had a small meal there of tibs. Tibs is basically little chunks of meat kind of grilled up and served, and you have kocho, which is one of the breads made out of the enset plant, which is a false banana. and injera, which is made out of teff, which is a grain. So we had a small meal there, then we returned to Emdeber. There we had lunch again, and this time I had never seen this before, because they all had those red chunks in the middle. Those are just like slabs of meat, just a slab of meat, and they would carve off a chunk and eat. Personally, I had another thing of Tibbs, kind of the cooked stuff. And so I was over there, and they were carving off chunks of raw meat. I'd never seen this. I mean, when they have kitfo is chopped meat. Theirs is raw. When the Brands have it, or when I'm around or whatever like that, they always make sure it's cooked. It's something about those worms. They say the worms aren't that bad because you can just take some medicine, but they choose not to have the raw meat. So this was an educational opportunity for me once again. Then the next Sunday, we left for the church in Kabul, which is near Mount Mugo. Mount Mugo is up and across the escarpment and is what I thought the highest place in that area. Oliver and I climbed Mount Mugo last time we were there, and it's about 10,500 feet, something like that, high. The Italians had an outpost up there, and they had dug a cave, and it was a nice time to walk through what little forest they had and to look at it. So we were up there in Kabul. Well, Kabul is a heavily Muslim area. They had tried to start churches there several times, and nothing had worked. There's a lot of persecution, and when they persecute there, they burn things down and kill people and stuff like that. Well, there was an evangelist, actually not from Guragi. He actually came up from the lowlands and was up there, and they had threatened him, whatever, but he just kept on going. And so we were purposefully not going to go up there because there's something about Howard being large and white hair and Joanne being white and me being white and showing up while they're into a small church. The point of attraction would be very, very high, and we didn't want to bring attention to have possible trouble caused. However, they had different ideas. They said, please come up here and do this. So contrary to what we thought, we all went up to Kabul, and we got there, and there were Muslims outside watching the building as we came in. This building is a small house, about 12 feet wide and about 24 feet long. And so we went in there. So inside there, started off, the choir was praying, and we're looking forward to the front of the building where the door is. Then this is turning around and looking into the room, so you can see the size of the room that they were meeting in. And this is the choir, and the young man in the blue coat, he had the guitar. He knew 4 chords. So of the several songs they sang, they had the same 4 chords in the same order. The choir was talented. The young man was giving it his full effort. But they were unabashed in their praise. Then Howard gave the message of that time, and he talked about the woman at the well and the living water.
እነሱ ለብቻቸው ነበሩ እና ያው እንግዲህ ሰማርያ በተሸነፈ ጊዜ ያው እንግዲህ የዛ ያሸነፋቸው ንጉስ ምን አደረገ? እንግዳ ሰዎች ከሌላ ሀገራቸው ካልሆነ ነገር አመጣና በሱ ዘራቸው። እነኚህ ሰዎች እነሱ ሲመጡ ሃይማኖታቸው ደግሞ አመጡ እነኚህ ሰዎች። ስለዚህ የእስራኤል ሃይማኖት የቅዱስ አምላክ ሃይማኖት ያው እንግዲህ በዛ ውስጥ ሲባለቅ እንደዚህ ሲባለቅ ነገሩ ተደባለቀ። ልክ አልሆነም።
Howard is fluent in Amharic, so he preaches in Amharic, and he knows a little bit of Grogina, which is the local tribal language for Garagi. And so when he speaks that, when he's in there, everybody gets excited because he actually knows some of the local dialect. But I just wanted to let everybody hear a little bit of Amharic, and on the Sundays what we would do, we would go and Howard would preach. So that's what we did that Sunday up in Kabul. All totaled, there were 21 in attendance, plus the 4 of us, with 6 young folks aging from the teens, with 3 of them at about 3 years old and a couple of little ones. We left afterwards, after some photos. So that is the group of believers in Kabul. Several of them are converted Muslims from Kabul. And just to show you that I'm actually was there and not just behind the camera, the evangelist is the man in the dark coat right beside me. Pray for him, pray for his safety, because it is a very persecuted area. For some reason, everybody wanted to take selfies with me as well, and I never figured that out. So after that, we drove down to the town of Arakat, which is on the way, and we had kitfo. Kitfo is one of Oliver's favorite dish because it's meat drowned in butter. So for us, it was cooked. On the other tables, if I would have panned the other way, you would have seen bowls of chopped raw meat drowned in butter, which they all loved. They just thought it was pretty much sacrilege for us to cook the meat. But I included that picture there just for Oliver because he polished off one of those when we were there, one of those bowls, several times. Well, that evening, I remember to open up a letter package from Oliver. Excuse me. He had made me promise not to open it up until my birthday. It contained notes from 12 of the young men and the young ladies wishing me a happy birthday and thank yous for the ways I had interacted in their lives. I do not ever remember receiving such a wonderful gift. So February 3rd, we headed down to Gubre for Howard to preach. This was on a Friday, one evening. Remember, Gubre is the college town, so he was preaching in the evening. Howard and Joanne, dynamic duo. That Saturday, we went to Asfaw's house for dinner. And I'm including this picture here to kind of show what a typical fancy meal is at somebody's home. Kitfo is a common dish. The one behind the green bottle and the white bottle with the pool of butter, that's kitfo. And then the one with the white and the other, the one is a vegetable, kind of like kale or whatever that's cooked. It's really good. And the other part is cheese. And then there's some other dishes. And it's always served with kocho, which again is the bread they make out of the enset plant, and injera. And you eat everything pretty much with your hands or a spoon. Dishes are optional. And then, for those of us that have been there before, this is Asphalt and his family. Asphalt was the first general secretary. He was the one that we originally dealt with at the beginning of the Bible school, and he was a general secretary for many years. He is working on his master's degree online. There were a lot of problems in the church for a while, but they have picked new leaders. They still go to Asphalt especially on any of the legal dealings. Very godly man and a good leader. He was the one that dropped what he was doing and jumped in the van with me when we went to pick up supplies. That was the 4th on Saturday. I don't really have anything on Sunday because I was sick. I just kind of sat in a chair, stared out at the courtyard of the hotel I was at the Weeds, and had my phone beside me, and I accomplished reading a devotional and one chapter of Ezekiel the whole day. Anyway, I just kind of sat there. That was my worst day. Howard preached, and then we went on. But the next day, Monday, was the day for the students' reunion. Now, this was 6th or 7th class. Classes are about 2 years long that have gone through. So there's been a lot of students that have gone through. The Garagi area had wanted to secede from their general area. They wanted to have their own government, and they thought the good way to do this, this is where the young people decided for them. There's a story about that with Rehoboam and Jeroboam and young people making decisions. Well, they decided it would be really good if they just shut down all the transportation in Garagi to show the government that Garagi should have its own stay and be its own government center. So the only people they were punishing was Garagi. So this went on for a couple of days, but it affected the conference, and only about half of the past attendees came. And they went all out and they got everybody a nice blue t-shirt. This is a little bit of from the conference. Music, style, a lot of clapping, familiar beat, whether it's in church service or in this. This was a praise song there. So then we took a picture of the attendees. If you look really careful, you'll see Howard and Joanne. They're the ones waving. Oh, that's right, lots of people are. But this is about half of the past students that have attended there. Remember, these are pastors and teachers and evangelists and missionaries and leaders in the church. That's the reason I go back. Because these people are witnessing all around Garagi. They're spreading the gospel, leading people to Christ, evangelizing in very difficult areas. On February 9th, all of the church and the school leaders and Howard and Joanne and I headed to Aliso. It's a town closer to Addis, because Howard was teaching on the basics of mission planning and sending. So here's a couple of pictures from there. That is a chair that easily fits 2 people out of a single chunk of wood. Now, from the left, we have Mesfin. He's the current general secretary. He's the person that, when Asphalt left, he stepped in. The lady beside him is their cashier accountant for the school, and somewhere I can remember her name. The person standing beside her is Mikias. Mikias was in my group building bunk beds the very first time. He was part of the very first class. He is the spiritual leader. Mesfin is the general secretary. Mikias is the spiritual leader. They're the 2 main people for the Kalihiwat area, leaders of the church there. The person beside Mikias is Temuzgan. Temuzgan was the pastor in Gubre, the college town, and they only had a small congregation of like 1,200 people, college students and stuff like that. He is a hoot. He likes to witness. He keeps on wanting me to go out on the street witnessing to people, and I keep on reminding him we all have our gifts. But he continues to work in Gubre. He would normally be the dean of the school, but they have a rule there that you have to live in Emdeber to be the dean. And he lives in Gubre because his wife teaches there. So he's the academic dean. Very, very capable person. The man in the blue beside him is Kibru. He's one of the teachers there. He is actually currently the dean of the school. He's fairly new at the school, but don't let that alarm anybody. All of these men are highly capable, godly men. The young man beside Kibru is Dawit. Dawit is their way of saying David. Now, Dawit is their actual accountant for both the school and the church. He's the main guy. He's got a master's degree in accounting. And for those of us like Colin, who has just got his driver's license, and like some other people that have got their driver's license, Dawit, besides Bedlu, the man kind of crouching down, is the only person there that actually has a driver's license. That is a fairly big thing. So they've already got him penciled should they ever get a vehicle, that he can be their designated driver. Dawit helped me out after we got going, and I told them that if they ever need tile repair or door lock replacement or any of these things, Dawit was their man, because he was there as we were chiseling off the metal plates on the metal doors and drilling holes in them and all. Highly capable. It was really good to see that he would pick up things almost intuitively as we were starting to do some of our work. So that was the group that went with Howard and Joanne and I to this learning about missions and sending people, where they came by their 5x5 theme. They decided to come up with a theme, send out 5 missionaries. Missionaries are people that go out of the country. Evangelists are the ones that go out to different areas. So they were saying, we want to commit to 5 leaders being missionaries within 5 years. And the first person to step up was Mesfin. So pray for Mesfin, pray for the Groggy area. It's a bold and ambitious plan. but to send people out to be missionaries to other parts of the world. Then the next day, well, we watched a sheep get slaughtered. Well, I did. Not we, but I could show you all of that if you really wanted to. I have videos and everything that I took for Ole because he wanted to have the nitty-gritty details. However, we watched a sheep get slaughtered. I took pictures and videos for Oliver. From alive to chunks of grilled meat in a pan. Well, that's not quite alive, but that's shortly after, to that time there. Now, this brings to me a point that I'd always been wondering about. You read in the Bible how they run and prepare a calf or some such and quickly prepare a meal. And I've dressed a few animals in my time, and several people here have done the same. And it's always puzzled me that you could run out there and grab a calf or a sheep and dress it and prepare a meal for a visitor that just came that was going on their way. So we're going to start off. We have the parable of the prodigal son in Luke 15, 20 through 28. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. His son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against both heaven and you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But his father said to the servants, "Quick, bring the finest robe in the house and put it on him. Get a ring for his finger and sandals for his feet. And kill the calf we have been fattening. We must celebrate with a feast. For this son of mine is dead and now has returned to life. He was lost, but now he is found." So the party began. Things happened quickly. And then we have Saul and the witch at Endor in 1 Samuel 28, 20 through 24. These are all very different stories. They're very different. So we have Saul fell full length on the ground, paralyzed with fright because of Samuel's word. He was faint with hunger, for he had eaten nothing all the day and all night. When the woman saw how distraught he was, she said, "Sir, I obeyed your command at the risk of my life. Now do what I say and let me give you a little something to eat so you can regain your strength for the trip back." But Saul refused to eat anything. Then his advisors joined the woman in urging him to eat. So he finally yielded and got up from the ground and sat on the couch. The woman had been fattening a calf, so she hurried out and killed it. She took some flour and kneaded it into dough and baked unleavened bread. She brought the meal to Saul and his advisors, and they ate. Then they went out into the night, quickly preparing a meal. And finally, we have Abram and Sarah in Genesis 18, 2 through 6. He looked up and noticed 3 men standing nearby. When he saw them, he ran to meet them and welcomed them, bowing low to the ground. "My lord," he said, "if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree while the water is brought to wash your feet. And since you have honored your servant with his visit, let me prepare some food to refresh you before you continue on your journey." "All right," they said, "do as you have said." So Abraham went back to the tent and said to Sarah, "Hurry, gather 3 large measures of your best flour, knead it into dough, and bake some bread." Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to his servant, who quickly prepared it. When the food was ready, Abraham took some yogurt, milk, and roasted meat and served it all to the men. As they ate, Abraham waited on them in the shade of the tree. Did you catch that? In verse 7 it said, "Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a tender calf and gave it to the servant, who quickly prepared it." I watched Edlu take a sheep that was going bah from sheep to grilling. And when I look back at the timestamp from those pictures from the slaughter till you saw it there on the grill, that was less than 2 hours. And this is down the road where we were having this for dinner. And he didn't know that I was going to timestamp these pictures and calculate this time. But it's pretty amazing how fast they can take a knife, just like this, sharp on both sides. They can slaughter a sheep, and it makes a deep cut. I'll just leave it there. Makes a deep cut, and then they skin it, and they do all to the sheep with a knife just like this. Lickety-split. And then soon you have tasty sheep grilling on the grill. So it was one of those things where the Bible kind of came to life when I started putting all these things together and seeing how fast they could actually do this. The next day, the Brants left for Durrami to teach for a week. Durrami is a town 100 miles or so farther south. It's over past Mount Mugo, down off the escarpment and down into southern part of, or toward more sort of the southern part of Ethiopia. But the day they left, there was a conference there in Emdeber. It turned out that it was the largest ever held in the Garagi area. There appeared to be, from my best guesstimate, over 10,000 people in attendance. This is just kind of a panning the crowd. The first day of the conference, there were 26 people that came to Christ, and on the second day, there were more than 20. There was a few other things. Probably most people haven't seen a lot of demon-possessed people being brought out, and so there's a lot of stuff that happens over there that they're not quite the norm here. But one of the things that was also interesting is they read a letter from the leaders of the Muslims in the Emdeber area. And this is the letter, what they read. The Christians in this area are bringing peace. You have had much persecution, but you bring peace. We want this to continue. Please have more conferences and continue to bring and spread peace. This is what we want in this area and in Ethiopia. This was pretty amazing to hear, knowing what happens out and about very close to Emdeber, and what happened when they originally started to try to put the Bible college there. A lot of persecution. Now, because of the witness, they're giving letters like this. So, keep on keeping on. Then, once again, this is a picture at our local, we would have Buna several times a day, in the morning, in the late morning, in the later morning, in the early afternoon, in the late afternoon, after dinner, and it's stout coffee, stout, trust me. But again, we have Temuskin, we have Mikius. The person in the white in the back is Daniel. He was the original dean of the college when it first started up. Currently, he is in Addis, finishing up his master's degree. Very, very capable man. Then we have Kibru again, and ending with Mesfin. All of these, again, once again, I cannot express how capable they are and how much they need your prayers for the work that they're doing. They never stop. They're out witnessing, they're out visiting churches, encouraging people all the time. And then, what else did I build while I was there in between all of the repairs? Because it was constantly repairs. Constant repairs. Well, they came up with, they needed some bookcases. So I made 4 of these bookcases for the leaders' offices. And then they wanted lecterns. They wanted a place so they could put their laptop in the classroom and have it in front of them so they didn't have to fiddle out with tables and things like that. So I'm doing these things by description, and so when I get close, I say, well, do you want it flat or do you want it angled? Well, we want it angled. So I made it angled, and then they said, well, we want a lip on the bottom. And then somebody else comes in, can we have walls on the side? And then somebody goes, can we have cup holders on here? And I asked them if they wanted some electrical outlets on there too, and they started saying yes, and I go, no, I'm just joking. They ended up with a lip to keep their computer from sliding off. But they, go for the gold. And what report would be on Ethiopia would be complete without a picture of a traditional house. If you look really close, there's somebody hanging on the side of that house. They're actually rethatching it with the grass there. And then finally, a bajaj. Now, a bajaj. There's those little vehicles there. It's like a Honda 50, Honda 70 maybe, with a cab behind it. You can put 7 or 8 people, several large bags of produce, and everything else in one of those. Well, the night before I am to leave, I have a flight one day. I'm going to go to Addis the day before, and this is the previous night before the trip to Addis. I'm sitting there, and I'm at Mesfin's house, and he kind of nonchalantly says, well, there's some problems in Welkite. Remember, Welkite is that town, the big town that you have to turn at on the road that goes up to Addis. They go, well, there were some problems with the water, and a bunch of people went to the government office. And then they started throwing stones, and the government shot back, and there's like 7 or 8 dead people, and they've shut down all the transportation. And it's kind of dramatic, and I'm sitting there going, okay, they've shut down the transportation. I'm supposed to be flying out of here day after tomorrow, and it takes a day to get to Addis. But Mesfin doesn't really seem that really concerned, and I'm just, I know they want me to stay, but, I've been there a month, and it's time to come home. I'd like to take a shower. So 6:30 in the morning, we kind of carry I'm down to 1 suitcase now because I left a bunch of tools there, out to the road. Because normally we take public transportation, which will be a van or something like that. You flag it down, you jump on, and you kind of pay for the distance you go. You and 14 or 15 of your closest friends or whoever else have crowded into this 8-passenger van. But nothing is moving on the road. Nothing. I mean, wide open. Well, the dogs were. They love to walk around, and the donkeys and the goats and the sheep. So we kind of get one of these bajajes, and we jump into this bajaj, and he said there's a way we can go up through Agena, and so we jumped into this bajaj, and we went down the road a little ways, and then we kind of turned onto this little dirt road, and we kind of went down the dirt road, and then the dirt road had lots and lots of ruts, and kind of turned into a trail, and we kind of went down, and we started going up the hill, and it would die, and we were there in the middle of nowhere on a trail in a bajaj, and he would get it started, and we would put a little farther, and we'd go, and eventually we came out on a dirt road, and then we followed the dirt road for a while, and then eventually we popped out onto another paved road. Well, they're built by the Chinese, and pavement is kind of an optional thing on a paved road if you're a Chinese builder and you're taking graft and whatever, because most of them have huge potholes. So for the last 3 miles there, we were going down this road, but it took us an hour to go 12 miles. But life is an adventure. So then we were in the town of Agena, and on this road. And we're putzing along, and we're gaining altitude, and I'm Going, yeah, we're going up higher. Let's see. Emdeber, 7,000 feet, and we've been going uphill, and we're still going uphill. So I pulled out my app that gives me my altitude, and I go, okay, well, we're 9,500 feet. And we're going uphill, and it's 10,000 feet, and we're going uphill. And I go, well, Mount Mugo was the tallest thing that I knew about, and it's 10,500. Well, past 10,500, and we're still going uphill. And then we get over 11,000 feet, and we go through this town, and the next thing I know, we're up on the top of this escarpment, looking down into the Rift Valley. And then we dropped off, and we started following this zigzaggy road down. It cost a lot of money to replace brakes, so we don't use them when we're driving the van because that's expensive. And there's guardrail. Well, no, there's no guardrails because they're all torn up and tipped down over the hill. And Mesfin leans over and he goes, oh, Howard and Joanne, they don't want to go here. They hate this road. And then he goes, take some pictures. And I'm hanging onto the van as we're careening down because they don't understand incline either. And they just, it was a blessing when we got down to the flatland there in Budajara, and we had breakfast and coffee to calm my nerves. And so then we hit the other road that comes from the lowlands, and it ends up going up into Addis. And there we only stopped 15 or 20 times because they check your ticket on the van, because we switched vans, and they pack us in like sardines. And then we go along, and then somebody flags you down, and we have to pull over, and then they check the ticket to make it sure it's okay. We go down a couple more kilometers, somebody else flags us down. And I'm puzzling this. I'm going, this road only comes from one place, and we're getting pulled over. Then there's the armed guys, and we really wanted to stop for them. But we made it into Addis, and everything was nice. We had a nice meal, and I flew out of there the next time. We have this, that's horrible. Okay, don't mind that. But it was kind of showing you that somewhere up there is Addis, and then there's a road that comes down and it turns at Welkite, and it goes over to Emdeber. And then there's kind of this faint line that goes from partway out of Welkite over to another road. And then there's blank areas. Well, that's where the Bajaj and I were having a good time going down the trail to connect point A and point B. Anyway, life's an adventure. But again, pray for the school there. Again, the students are the reason I go over there, seeing people willing to give their time and energy and willingness, and they're bold for spreading the gospel. So to see the reunion, to see them, to be able to interact with the students while I was there, helps build the relationships, and you get to see people that are living for Christ in difficult situations. So, thank you very much. Are there any questions? I never quite understood exactly but they were trying to check this ticket that the driver is supposed to have, saying how many people he left with. Evidently, it's, well, everything you can do for $1. So if you can swing your van over and pick up somebody else, and these vans are, they're 8-passenger vans, and you only have 15 or 20 people in them. So a few more. But they were doing this, but they would check them all the time. I never understood why so many checkpoints. But you'd be going along, and they'd flag you over, so we'd pull over. Driver would run out, come back, drive a little ways farther. Yeah, they're probably greasing the skids, yes. Paying a little bit here or there to be able to take his group of folks down the road. Yes, sir.
Were you able to show the students the prayer?
Oh, yes. during breaks, remember, they like to drink coffee. I'd go down there and I'd share their love for coffee. And we would talk about a lot of things. One of the things we did in the English class that I was doing is I actually had them read their bio, and then I would show them the person from Manchester who was praying for them. So they got to see that. So we would do that quite often. I had both the book they put together. They gave the bios of the individual people, as well as our directory here, so I could show them there are people here praying for each one of the students over there. So that was a good time. So they had a good time reading their own bio, and then seeing the person who specifically was praying for them.
Did you see any snakes there?
Yes, I saw a snake there. Bedloo, he was our driver, so he was kind of around, but they gave him a room there at the Bible college to be in. Well, one day, he's over there and he's got this frame of a bench kind of pressed up to this thing, and I look over there, and to me it just looks like a little garter snake. Go, Bedloo. And I went to reach down and grab it, and he was really excited about that. So I caught it a little differently and picked it up, and I took it over someplace. He informed me the next morning, because he made sure his door was locked. He was really quite concerned about that snake, and I really do think it was just a little garter snake. But he said it died during the night, and I'm not sure if he helped it along more than crushing it with that frame or what. But yes, I saw a snake. A little bitty one. Yes, sir.
In one of the first slides you had, it showed a river or a creek with rocks in it. What do they use the water for? For washing clothes or drinking or what's?
They wash clothes. Most of those rocks down there, especially on the weekends, you'll find them pounding clothes and washing. I would not drink out of these creeks. There's far more of them than I had ever seen before. And it was because of these nocturnal early morning walks around the countryside. I ran into these little streams here and there, but they pretty much use them for washing clothes and stuff. The water system that they claim is coming, so it may be there the next time, 10 or 15 years. Yes, they would bring buckets of water. They had some water that was occasionally turned on, and they would gather it and they would bring it at the hotel I was at, this minus 2-star hotel. They would take it from the well. They had a well there, and they would draw it up, and as long as all the floaties and stuff had sank, then you could still take a rinse in it and flush the toilet. Any drinking water you had sealed bottled water. Far safer than trying the other stuff. Even the locals don't drink the regular stuff. Everybody drinks bottled water. Or coffee. Actually, they drink a lot of coffee and, kind of top it off every once in a while with a little bottled water. What I have brought up front here are things that I have gathered from the 5 times I've been over there. I didn't bring some of the breaky things, but there are some interesting things up here. A vellum scripture book in the original language, a lunchbox, a hippo hide war shield, some fly swatters. Oh, lunchbox. Vellum scripture. There's some pictures in here. Vellum, of course, is the thin scraped leather, and it was written in the original script, not the one that they use now. This is more of a Coptic type lalabella or some other type of cross that they would put on their staff. The Orthodox Church is fairly big into a lot of icons and other things like that. I don't know exactly which one this is, but this would fit on the top of a staff. Staff, just kind of a ceremonial staff as you would walk around with. These are fly swatters. So there are some horses over there with very short tails. Very short tails. So fly swatters, and they work marvelous because you can whack a fly out of the air like no tomorrow. And it really doesn't damage other things. It just kind of cripples them and takes their wings off and things like that. Anybody understand or know what this is? This is a pillow. You see, in just south of the Groggy area, they have fancier hairdos, and they don't want to muss them up, so they put this back there, and pillow. This is a local Groggy type where they take some of the local vegetation and they do some basket stuff. Pretty nice stuff here. Some of the ceramic things like their coffee pots and bowls have limited success on traveling across the world. So I figured I would have limited success of having whole ones if I brought them here and there were handling of other things. Some old knives, because who doesn't like a good old knife? In a peculiar shape, more the stabby type of knives. And speaking of stabby type things, a couple of different spearheads. They had several different types. Those. Oh yeah, these all be in the check luggage. You know, you don't bring these sharps onto the plane. And then this is a war shield. This is made out of hippo hide, and they lash the handle on and hard. They probably stopped using these when they started bringing rifles and guns and things like that. But for the pokey things, it does pretty well at stopping those. I thought it was pretty cool. And then, of course, everybody needs their local butchering knife. Sharp on both edges, because why have a dull edge? What use is that? Very handy. And then there's a couple of other little icons up here. Their iconology, they're very big into St. George and the Dragon. So you'll notice that if you look in the vellum book, there's a drawing. They like seeing St. George stab the dragon. And in the rock carving in the other one I have here, another poor dragon has met his match. St. George wins again. Any other questions? No? Well, thank you very much.
Over there in North, thanks to the Groggy people and those folks, pastors and missionaries that are going out and evangelizing, Lord, continue to protect them from the Muslims and whoever is over there against that, your message, and I pray that you'll just continue to bless us there. Help us as we go on our way, Lord, and keep us safe tonight. Thank you.